Right. Welcome, everybody. My name is Danielle Stein-Fairhurst. Let's get started. So I'm a financial modelling specialist, and I love bringing these events to wherever I am. And a lot of the time we do them online, and every now and then we manage to do them in Sydney. And we have a small audience here in the room, and we have got hundreds of people online. So it's a big one.
I blame the weather.
Yes, it's the weather. Yeah. It's a very rainy night here in Sydney. So I am very pleased to introduce you to a good friend of mine, Jeff Robson. Jeff got in touch with me only a couple of weeks ago to say that he was going to be in town and would I like to catch up? And of course, instead of just, I think he meant, like, did you want to have lunch or something? That's what you meant, wasn't it?
That was what I was referring to, yes.
And I said, well, could we maybe just invite the rest of Sydney financial modellers to come and see you, because they would absolutely love to see you and, of course, hear from you. And we managed to pull it together and get the very last slot before CPA shuts down for a few months. So I was very happy about that. And then you came up with this brilliant topic of what financial modelers need to know about AI. So I'm really excited about that. So Jeff is the Managing Director of Access Analytics in Perth. He is a travelling trainer, and I'm sure he'll tell us all about that. And I'll hand over to you, Jeff. Take it away.
Beautiful. All right. Thanks so much, Danielle. And thank you for suggesting tonight. Really not what I was expecting at all when I suggested let's catch up for a coffee. So, but very pleased to be here, and thank you for coming along on this very cold, wintry, well, it's not really cold, just wintry Sydney night. As this is a presentation on AI, I thought I'd get AI to do the introduction for us. So this is Grace. Let me introduce you to Grace, and she's going to do our intro today.
Welcome, everyone, and thank you, Danielle. My name is Grace, and it gives me great pleasure to be your co-host today as we discuss what financial modelers need to know about AI. Artificial intelligence is a hot topic at the moment, but many of us are uncertain about how to benefit from all the amazing things that it can do. So this is the focus of today's session. It'll be a fun, interactive, and very practical discussion regarding what financial modelers need to know about AI and how they can get tangible benefits from using it. Our speaker today is Jeff Robson, Managing Director of Access Analytics. Jeff has been providing financial modeling and data analytics to clients for over 25 years. I know it's hard to believe. He looks so young. Anyway, he's now run training workshops in 27 countries and has also rock climbed, hiked, or scuba dived in most of them. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please join me in welcoming a guy who spent the whole of last week rock climbing in the Blue Mountains, Jeff Robson.
All right. Thank you, Grace. What a great introduction. That's amazing. All right. Let's go to our presentation.
I'm just going to reshare for a sec. Make sure it's sharing. There we go.
Beautiful. Thanks, Danielle. Business is going to change more in the next 10 years than it has in the last 50. That was a quote from Bill Gates, or that is a quote from Bill Gates from 1999. Now, it was an exciting time in 1999 as the internet was just coming to fruition, just starting up. Some of you here today weren't even born then, but allow me to remind you, take you back to what life was like back in 1999. Most of us were on a dial-up modem. Fax machines were the main form of communication. It was still exciting to receive an email. An iPhone's computing power would have been equivalent to about 500 mainframes and cost about $1 billion. Amazon was just an online bookstore that kept losing money. Google had just raised its first round of funding. Yes, a massive $25 million. And the Y2K bug had us all very worried that the world was about to end. It's amazing how much the world has changed in just 26 years, isn't it? The way we buy, the way we sell, the way we communicate, the way we do just about everything has changed. And it's all because of the internet. But the impact of AI is going to be even bigger than that. Far more significant and far more profound. If you think about someone that was born just recently, like this little guy, what's it going to be like when he starts work in around about 2050? Well, more than likely, machines will be smarter than us. There'll be artificial general intelligence, almost certainly. Perhaps even artificial superintelligence will be here, and they'll be far surpassing anything that we can do. Quantum computing will be most likely be commonplace. So Microsoft just recently released a quantum computing chip, and with the ability to solve problems that would take traditional computers thousands of years to solve. So with quantum computing, we have almost unlimited computing power. We'll have personalized medicine. So medicine that is tailored to our DNA. That means less side effects and more of the good effects of the medicine. Being able to improve its effectiveness. As a result, more than likely, this little guy will live to at least 100, quite possibly well past 100. It will become quite common to do that. Aging may even be optional. May even be able to reverse aging by then. Who knows? Scary thought, isn't it? All right. More than likely, he'll never even get a driver's license. He won't even need one. Nobody will drive anything. Cars, boats, planes, trucks, drones, all these things will be driven by AI and by machines. More than likely, he'll have the option to live on the moon. We'll probably have a colony there. And if Uncle Elon has his way, more than likely a colony on Mars as well. And lastly, we may finally get those flying cars that have been promised to us for such a long time, and possibly even have them powered by Mr. Fusion, which has always been at 25 years away for the last at least 50 years. All these things and more we due large part to AI. All right, so where are we at right now? Because that all sounds fantastic, but where are we at right now, I hear you ask? All right, that is a good question. Well, so far, there's been a lot of this, a lot of drum beating, a lot of AI promises, a lot of AI hype. But where's the business benefit, I hear you ask? It is a good question. Well, I really believe that 2025 is the year when AI essentially rolls up its sleeves and starts to become useful. And why is that? Well, because it's starting to become embedded in our normal day-to-day processes and the things that we normally do. This is what we're focused on today. So with that in mind, AI is moving so fast. Now I'm interested to hear how different people are using it. So Danielle has a microphone here and we've got some people online. So just take a moment, if you wouldn't mind, anyone got anything they would like to share about how they're currently using AI, either people online or people in the room here?
For those of you who are online, maybe just write it in the chat.
Put it in the
and
chat.
For those in the room, I'll pass around a microphone.
It could be in any of these areas, marketing, maybe you're using it for, AI generated content or chatbots or personalization, all sorts of different things.
I actually used AI last night. I was trying to do research about eSIMs to travel overseas, and I was too lazy to Google and just go through, find every single, all the companies and different plans out there.
Yeah.
So I typed into Perplexity, I'm going overseas. I need a data SIM for 15 days. I need at least 5 gigabytes. Find me the best value eSIM providers. And it basically gave me the recommendations plus discount codes to use. So it saved me a couple of hours of work.
There you go. Fantastic. Yeah, that's a great way of using it, isn't it?
Cool. We've got people online saying that they like Claude. They use it for data research. Anyone else?
Any other ways people are using it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Husband?
Yeah. I've used it to upload planning documents, which can be very dry, very kind of process-led, legislative kind of elements. And because they're tailored, asking them to just give me a summary. So instead of reading the whole document and having to glean those articles yourself, within a few minutes, the highlight points are there.
Cool. Nice. Yep. Very useful for doing that kind of stuff, isn't it? Definitely. Is it still going? Yep. Cool. Was there any other ones online that people had said?
Just Copilot, OpenAI, getting a first draft on a meeting pitch, that sort of thing.
Yep. Cool. Yeah, so it is moving incredibly fast, and so it's great. People are using it, like you said. A lot of people kind of replacing Google with some kind of LLM. Using it in the way that we do coding, or the way that we write our, produce our financial models. There's all sorts of different ways of using it, isn't there? So it really is changing all facets of our business life. So we're focused predominantly on AI for financial modeling. So what do we as financial modelers need to know about AI? Well, I'd probably suggest I've written down, I've got 3 things on this slide, one more on the next slide, in terms of what we need to know about AI. First one I'd say is AI can automate and improve our forecasting. But I'd say can, because there are some caveats to that, I think. So these are my suggested caveats anyway. So if we're going to use AI to improve forecasting, one of the things it all comes back to, for AI to work well and to work properly in this, we need to have good quality data. And AI typically needs quite a lot of it if we're going to use it in forecasting, because we've got to essentially train a model that have some way that it can use what happened in the past to then forecast the future in some way. Otherwise, it's not as good at forecasting. We need to have quite a well-defined forecasting problem as well. So what is it that we need to be really clear on what it is that we actually want the AI to forecast? And lastly, we ourselves need to know how to use the AI tools if we're going to be able to get a good quality forecast out of it. So some of them are simpler than others, of course. So yes, we can use it to automate and improve our forecasting with those things in mind. What else? So AI can also reduce the time it takes to build the models. So some people had already mentioned that people are using it for coding, for producing formulas. I was chatting with Tim Heng today at lunch, and we're chatting about how they're using it and how we're using it. So we can save a lot of time in building our financial models by getting it to do a lot of the coding, perhaps Power Query for us, or DAX code, or whatever it might be. We can also use it to document our models. So everyone loves writing documentation, right? But we can use something like a large language model to go through and say, here's a formula, just document this for us. It'll do 80% of the work for us. We might then tweak it a bit and add some extra stuff in that it wasn't aware of. But it can do a lot of the documentation, the heavy lifting for us. Producing sample data, that's a pretty simple, straightforward one. And even analyzing data. So uploading chunks of data into the large language models and getting it to essentially build a data model for us in there, and being able to then query that is another use for this. As part of that, we could also, if we did that kind of data analysis, we could also use it to help us run scenarios. So giving people that have less understanding about how to use a financial model, how to write Excel formulas, for example, the ability to do some simple kind of scenarios and what ifs, just using a natural language kind of interface. We'll have a look at some of these things in a moment. However, AI also introduces some new risks, doesn't it? And some considerations that we didn't have before when we were just doing stuff in Excel. So first one I've mentioned here is this overfitting. So AI will analyze what happened in the past and then use that to predict the future. But whether those two things are actually related is a different question. So it'll just say, well, that's what happened in the past, therefore we can then project the future. So it'll produce some kind of analysis and work out what the equations are to then project that forward, whether that's relevant or not. There could be bias in our models that we are potentially unaware of. So, or correlations that we're unaware of. That can help us to identify some of those. But if our data is biased in the first place, we're not going to get good quality outputs if we're using AI to do those predictions. Everyone be aware of security and privacy. Now, obviously, depending on which LLM you use, it's more of an issue or less of an issue. So, for instance, with Claude Anthropic, it is by default switched off, so the data you upload into there doesn't train the model. Whereas if you use ChatGPT, by default, it's switched on. You can switch it off, but you have to manually remember, oh, that's right, I've got to make this a temporary chat. So there's different ways of different considerations. All right, so things we need to be considering about. You know, if we are becoming faster and better at doing financial modeling, are we doing ourselves out of a job? Or are we enabling ourselves to become even more productive and do more work for more clients, if that's the sort of business that we're in, or enable us to take on more responsibilities within our organizations? So is it job displacement or is it job augmentation? All right, things that we need to be considering. So let's not spend too much time in the PowerPoint. Let's actually jump into Excel, and we're going to have a look at some stuff, AI in real life. All right, so let's go to this one first of all. All right, so what I thought I'd do is, hopefully that's readable on your screen. Not readable on this screen, that's for sure.
Yeah, it will.
There we go, now it's readable. Okay, thanks, Danielle. Okay. So what I've got here is, I thought I'd just talk a little briefly about some of the AI capabilities of Excel. This is not my laptop, so I can't show you how terrible Copilot is. That's not terrible. It's a good product. It's just early stages. Let's put it that way. So what I've got here is a little forecast. It's a very simple forecast. I've got a couple of inputs here telling us how many months of actuals we have and how many months of forecast I would like it to produce. So those are my two inputs. I've got some inputs over here as well in terms of what type of forecast I want it to produce. And then down here I have some input data as well, just in a simple table. So Danielle will be very pleased. We're using a lot of dynamic arrays here, sequences and all sorts of things like this. They're great, aren't they, Danielle? Yes, you've been talking a lot about these online just recently.
Is it that obvious? I've been banging on about them for so long.
They're really great. I agree with you. I agree with you fully. So anyway, sequences, I've got a nice sequence here. If you don't know anything about dynamic arrays, come and have a chat to Danielle. She'd be happy to teach you about all of those kinds of things.
I will talk about dynamic arrays to anybody.
Absolutely. All right. So essentially formulas, if you're not aware of what these are, formulas that copy themselves across and or down. So doing all sorts of cool things. I've generated all of the results along here that say actuals or forecast. And simply by changing my number of forecast months here, I can make it go and do some more clever things. Now, I've got a couple of formulas here. So I've got a sequence here to be able to generate those. I then also have EO month formula spilling across, which doesn't naturally spill across if you just have a number at the end here, or a spill function. But if you do something to the formula at the end here, it will force your EO month to then spill. There you go, a little tip for you there. So if I just had Z19 spilled, it won't spill across. But if you do something to Z19, multiply it by 1 or take 1 in my case, it will actually cause it to spill.
I usually just put a little minus in front of it.
Yeah. So it's just stupid things like that you have to do to make it spill. All right. So what I've got down here, though, the thing that is doing where the AI is coming into this is I've got a little AI function down here called the Labs Generative AI function. Hands up who's using or has used the Labs Generative AI function. All right. Cool. Okay. So this brings ChatGPT directly into Excel. So what this allows me to do is write a prompt that this function passes across into ChatGPT and then returns a result. Now it is using OpenAI's ChatGPT, you do need to have a, we need to have a, why does it keep doing that?
I don't know.
All right. This is a bit frustrating.
All right.
So you do need to have an OpenAI API key. And yes, you do need to pay them a little bit of money for this, but you can do like quite a lot of queries without it really costing you very much money at all. So it's not quite free, but it's almost free. So it's quite an inexpensive function. But essentially, I'm just using concatenation here to generate a prompt using the data that I've got in my, get rid of that, using some of the input fields that I've got in here. So forecast the next three data points in this series, assuming that we're using the linear growth. It is challenging tonight. And then what I'm doing is passing it all these values just using a text join function. So join up all of my existing values out of the column here, out of the barrels sold. Just join each of those with I just put a pipe character between them to be able to join them all up and pass them in as one string. And then I've said what I want back from ChatGPT is just give me the next three numbers separated by commas and nothing else. So I've been quite strict with it in terms of what I want it to do. And then I take that output, so it's giving me the numbers separated by commas as the output, and then I split that up, and then I convert them into values. So I go back the other way. So first of all, join up all of my inputs into one string, and then return the numbers separated by commas and nothing else, and then split that by commas, which is my text split based on a comma at the end there. Am I making sense? I could put this into ChatGPT and ask it to explain it, probably better than I can. But anyway, we'll make this file available. You can always play with it yourself later on if you wish to. So you do need to have the Excel Labs function installed. So, sorry, add-in, I should say. You need to have the Excel Labs add-in. It's a free add-in from Microsoft. So I did that, and this function is essentially the same as the one underneath it. So they are both basically just doing the same thing. That gives me three numbers here for my quantities, three numbers for my price, and then I'm stacking them onto each of these actuals. So I have actuals up to column 9, and then my forecast numbers on the end, being forecast using this kind of forecasting method. So obviously you could type in here, anything you want. I've used linear growth or exponential growth, and I could have made this much, much simpler by simply using the Excel's, growth function and whatever the other one is.
Forecast and trend.
Thank you. Trend, that's the other one I was trying to think of. Thank you. Yep, so I could have made it much simpler with those functions, but where's the fun in that? So more of a demonstration of how we can bring ChatGPT into our models and use it to do some somewhat useful things. So then my last function was simply just to do a H-stack to transpose the column. Let me just edit this. So transpose the column and then stack on the end of that these three values. And if I was to change this, now this is not my PC, so if this doesn't work, it's not my fault. If I add another, let's say, if we go out to 15, off it goes and regenerates all of my numbers, hopefully. So it's sending that off to, or it should be sending this off to ChatGPT and giving me my numbers back.
They're just taking a little while to calculate, maybe.
Maybe. All right. Anyway.
But it really wants you to use Copilot. You see the
I did want to use Copilot as well.
Icon that comes up all the time.
Yes.
It's been very, very heavily recommended.
I have Copilot in here, actually. I could have used it in there.
Just in case you've forgotten that we have Copilot in Excel.
Copilot
comes up all the time.
Everywhere. Yeah. Yes, just in case. All right. Let's move along. All right. So that's one type of modeling. bringing our ChatGPT in. So the Labs Generative AI, Excel Labs Generative AI function. All right, let's go to this as another example of how we can apply ChatGPT. So what I've got here is an extremely simple financial model. So there's my extremely simple financial model, or a set of actuals. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to, or what I have done here is I've got an assumption on how each of these values need to be calculated. So these are my actuals. So these are my actuals. And I've got an assumption in here about what I want it to do to forecast the next however many years. So my prompt is, here's the values for the last 4 years. Only use the assumptions in column 3, calculate the next 3 years, basically, and return all the results as a CSV. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy that across, put that into my ChatGPT. Let's give ourselves a bit more space. So that's the first part of it. Don't need the image. Thank you, ChatGPT. And then I will also copy and paste in all of this data as well. So as I say, an extremely simple financial model. But if I was, not proficient with using Excel, this would allow me to do some basic kind of financial modeling. So if I go back in here, I can just paste that in. It doesn't really look particularly pretty in here, but ChatGPT is able to interpret this and understand it. So if I send that off, get it to do the work now. So that was my prompt. I've told it, again, I'm being quite strict with it. You've got to be accurate, double check your work, make sure you give me, make sure you're doing mathematical.
So it's really necessary to say that, is it?
I find it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's it should go without saying, don't you think?
You would think, right?
Yeah.
But here we go. There we go.
Ooh.
All right. So now we're getting, here's the full thing as you requested. And in here, I have a summary. I should have a summary. Yes. So there's my years 5, 6, and 7. So of each of those values. And then I asked it for a download as a CSV. So if I grab that, download my file, open that up. All right, so there's my CSV values, and those, I'm just going to copy those and paste them back over to here. Because back in here, I've already calculated what I expect them to be. So let's do a test to see how close it is. Right. All right. Yeah. Well, my percentage is not actual percentage, but I have actually calculated the values there, and then this is the difference between them over here. So you can see it did actually get them all right. It just showed these ones as a number of 45 rather than a percentage. But apart from that, it's actually calculated things correctly. So some very small differences, perhaps at the past the decimal places, but otherwise fine. So this is quite an improvement for anyone that's tried to do mathematical calculations in ChatGPT previously. It previously was quite terrible at doing these kinds of things. And you would ask it to do a mathematical calculation. It would produce a number very confidently, but if you typed out the same calculation on your calculator or Excel, it was completely wrong. It was just, it was close, but it wasn't actually correct. And you're just like, well, that's not good enough for, for a financial model. But now that we've got that in there, what we can then do is, if I go back to here, actually, sorry, not that one. So once I've got that in here, what I can do is then ask it to do some questions, or ask it some questions. So I could run some scenarios on this now. I could say, what would the net profit be if, I don't know, let's say the unit cost increased by each year. So now I can get it to just run some different scenarios for me. So as I say, obviously a really simple financial model, but I haven't had to write a single Excel formula, and I have a forecast and I have a model that I can now do some pretty simple kinds of calculations against and run some different scenarios. All right. So there we go. So we could get it to give us our full table back, and then we could do some more checks and so on. But yeah, so another example. And let me go to a new chat now. And what I'm going to do is upload a file. That will be this one. And what I'm going to do with this one is, where's that in here? While that's uploading. So what I'm going to do is get it to run some prompts against this data file. And what I've got in this data file, just so that we know what we're dealing with, is I've got, this is challenging. I've got like 50,000 rows of data in this file. So 50,000 rows of GL data, very exciting stuff. I've got a list of like a chart of accounts here that tells me what the different accounts are with a bit more information about each one, list of what the departments are, and a list of what each of these entities are. So we've got data in here for multiple entities as well. So just some test, essentially just some test data. So when I put that into ChatGPT, I'm just going to ask it to start doing some analysis about this. And I've told it, essentially what I've told it to do is, let me just make that a little larger so we can read it. Read the data in from each sheet in the file, then join these different tables using these particular accounts and multiply the amounts and the values by the values that I had in the multiplier column. Now, the multiplier column is in the chart of accounts. It's not in my GL table. So I'm getting it to do some fairly, well, for us, pretty simple stuff. But, it's quite sort of clever, the sort of stuff that I'm asking it to do. So it's given me a merged file with all of the AUD amounts multiplied by the multiplier. So what else would you like to do with this? Well, I'm glad you asked. So I would like to do some analysis of this. So let me go and put this in here. All right. So now, acting as an expert CPA, give me some analysis of the monthly expenses, grouping these by account group. And I'm particularly interested in trends and relationships. Let me know what you see and suggest some reasons on why you think they might exist. So now not only is it doing the analysis, it's, I'm asking it to suggest some potential reasons for me and provide some commentary as well. So potentially we could use this, with our numbers, if we are, as long as we're not uploading anything that's we don't want people to see. I'm not sure why that's got a line through it. But there's sort of an analysis of what's happening with the key account groups that are in here. There's my largest expense groups, averages and standard deviations and all kinds of things like that. All right, and key relationships and insights. All right, a bunch of those and some possible reasons. So it's trying to guess why these things are happening. All right. All right, so I think we've got a pretty good, it kind of makes sense. So do we want to do some charts? Funny you should mention that. Yes, we do. So I will do that in a moment. Let's look at, for example, I'm asking it now to calculate a gross profit, but I haven't told it how to calculate the gross profit. So again, I'm relying on its knowledge to be able to calculate this. So for me, as if I was an uninformed user, I'm asking it to calculate gross profit without giving it any kind of further instructions. So I've got my monthly gross profit. Not sure what happens out here. Something's probably, not sure what's happened there, but all right. And there's my observations about that and so on. So I can kind of get it to do some quite interesting things. I could get it to produce a profit and loss. I could get it to run a break-even analysis. All these different ways of interacting with this data model that I've just created just by using natural language. So there's no DAX code, there's no Power Query code, there's no joining of telling it which one's a fact table, which one's a dimension table. All I've done is upload it into there, and I've told it to essentially join it on these fields. But apart from that, I haven't told it much more than that. And I'm able to do some quite clever analyses based on this. So those are some interesting, I thought they were interesting things anyway. All right. The last one we're going to look at. They don't have that. All right, let me just see whether I can have this last one that's available or not. I do. Perfect. All right, so so has anyone used the Copilot in Excel? Oh, is anyone paying for Copilot? No, not paying for that. Don't ask accountants. All right, so all right, if you do have Copilot, I will just demonstrate some of the things we can do with Copilot. So it's kind of at the stage where I feel like it's useful if you're not like a really well-informed Excel user. So if you were just like an Excel dummy, basically, this would be quite useful to you. But if you're if you've been on one of Danielle's training courses, you probably won't get a lot of benefit out of Copilot. So, you could say, give me some data insights out of this table, ask it to write a formula that if you don't know how to write a XLOOKUP or a sequence formula or something like that, be able to do those kinds of things. But in terms of actually getting it to do something that is quite useful, like it's not really that useful, I don't reckon.
I kind of struggle with the concept of, if someone knows so little about Excel, should they really be doing this?
Well, I don't know.
I think it's a bit scary.
It is.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, I mean, it gives you answers, but how do you know whether that's correct?
If you're not able to use Excel at any level, then why? And why is that? And maybe you're not able to see when something's wrong.
Yeah. We can sort of delve into like some deeper analysis and it draws a lot of cool stuff for us. But like you say, you wouldn't necessarily know. But I guess if you copied a formula in from off Google and you just copy and paste it in, if you're at the same level, you're not going to know whether that's correct either. But
that's true.
It does, it can do some useful things for you. But as I say, I'm yet to kind of go and find an Excel user that is really highly skilled in Excel that finds it useful. I'm still not sure. You could kind of use it to go, just give me a quick summary. What data am I working with? Someone sent you something and you're just kind of exploring what it is, I guess. It could be useful for that sort of thing. But yeah, probably.
We've got a couple of questions on here. And one of the last one I think is perhaps relevant from Gaurav. He says, all it does is a black box. It doesn't leave an audit trail. So is there any way to validate the accuracy of the answers it's giving?
In here? I mean, you can show the Python code. So then if you wanted to understand the Python code, so you can say, show me all the Python code, copy that into a large language model and say, explain it to me. You could do that if you're not familiar with Python.
So the audit trail is a bit of a problem, isn't it?
Yep. But yeah, if you just produce this number or these set of numbers, you go, I don't know, probably right. But I guess you could potentially go back and, validate some of them by manually doing some filters and setting some things like that in this case.
And Corinne says, what if somebody overwrites a number? Is there an audit trail for that?
In here?
Yeah. Excel doesn't really have that, does it?
Yeah, not really. No. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's always the case, isn't it? Unless you're using SharePoint, you go back, trace back the steps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, that's an interesting one, isn't it? Like, how do you, if you got a model like this and someone said, can you audit this model? Like, it would be extremely difficult to audit that model. Yeah. But some people would find it hard to audit the dynamic arrays as well, perhaps. But
that's true.
So yeah. Perhaps it's it's an understanding issue with the auditors, perhaps. Yeah. So yeah, I guess I just wanted to kind of touch on some of those and show if people haven't seen those in practice, some of the things you can do with it. As I say, I kind of feel, and this was a discussion I had with Tim earlier today, that we felt it's kind of useful, but it's not really at the level that it actually aids someone that is a knowledgeable Excel user, but it wouldn't aid someone that is perhaps an inexperienced Excel user. And that's probably where some of these, the previous things I was demoing at as well. The thing that does benefit, where I find it personally beneficial, is for, again, generating code. Like, can't be bothered writing a formula, or you can't be bothered writing VBA code, or you can't be bothered writing Power Query or DAX or whatever it might be. You can simply put into ChatGPT or whatever, give me this type of code that does this sort of thing. And then obviously you would know as an experienced user whether it's giving you the right thing or not. Or hopefully you would know. And you can test, and you know how to test, hopefully. So I find it quite useful in those kinds of scenarios. I find it useful for documenting formulas and so on as well, and model documentation. Again, where it's just, doing all the hard work that I can't be bothered doing, stuff that I don't really enjoy doing. I think, as people mentioned, researching, generating sample data would be another one. And, potentially doing other things, that might be useful as well. So there could be other things as well, like maybe writing a proposal, or helping you write a proposal if you're doing that for a client, or a business case if you're working internally in an organization, those kinds of things as well. All right, so I will leave it there. If you wanted to do a different kind of modeling, I was going to show you this as well. This is just fun. So if you wanted to do different kind of modeling, this was us doing some different kind of modeling. We were just having some fun and dragged our logo in with a little icon here into this product called Zazzle. Gives you an instant preview of what this might look like on a good-looking guy here. Looks a bit like Chris Hemsworth, I reckon. And guys, this is what happens when you wear the Access Analytic logo on your T-shirt. Exactly. Happens all the time. It's a problem I have to deal with. All right. Not really. So this was a video that was generated with Kling AI purely just by taking this original image and describing what I wanted to happen. Now, I didn't describe that I wanted two lovely ladies to come over. But then I thought I'd do the same for a girl, and she ended up being much more fun. And I put her in a nice T-shirt, fun and flirty. So all these are just generated by AI. So if you were doing something and you just need a video, these are some of the things you could do, generate an image. So all this was done in like about 10 minutes, different kind of modeling. So Excel Labs, we've kind of talked about. And I would just conclude by saying, it is an amazing time to be alive, because it is a really fundamental shift in human capability, in human ability and capability. that is really, changing and revolutionizing and will continue to change and revolutionize so many different parts of our society. For us as financial modelers, we've got to be prepared for what's happening in our own jobs, but also what's happening in the wider community, in a wider business sense. So we do need to be prepared. We need to identify what our AI opportunities and risks are, particularly as they pertain to our organization. We need to help prepare those around us. So if they are not aware of what's coming or they're resistant to change, hopefully we can be the ones that are helping to bring that change to our organizations in a controlled way, in a measured way, in a way that actually benefits the organization. And, we may need to get guidance or may need to get help if that's required as well. So in conclusion, AI is certainly not just another technological change. It really is a fundamental shift in human capability and potential. And things that were previously science fiction are now rapidly becoming reality. Many limiting factors are rapidly disappearing. So from personalized medicine to quantum computing, and from autonomous transport to even interplanetary colonization, the impact of AI on our society and on ourselves will be far more profound than the changes we experienced when the internet came around. And it goes without saying, as I say, that we need to be prepared both individually and collectively for what is coming. As financial modelers, it is really crucial that we understand both those risks and the opportunities that AI brings, and prepare organizations for a future where AI is an integral part of everything that we do. The decisions that we make today are really shaping the world of tomorrow for both us and for those around us. So let's all make sure we do as much as we possibly can to not stuff it up.
Sounds good.
All right, so thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jeff. You're always at the cutting edge of whatever's going on. So I knew you would not disappoint. We've got a couple of questions here if we've got a couple of minutes. So one from Kirsten saying, are you concerned about the confidentiality implications of using ChatGPT and other OpenAI tools? And how do you manage this?
Yes, to an extent, yeah. So there's different ways of managing. So I think depends on how paranoid you are. Let's put it that way. So if you're really paranoid, you can get a large language model and run it locally, either on your computer here, so it never goes out to the internet, and everything stays within your environment. You can use Microsoft's AI Studio, which again doesn't use the data from there is not used to train the model. Again, we've got to trust Microsoft with our data. But if you're using SharePoint, you already trust Microsoft with your data, or Azure. So Microsoft, or, there's obviously other ones as well, Google and Gemini and so on. So how else do we manage it? You can also do things like, turn off the training of the model. So turn on the temporary chat if you're not sure where that is. Let me quickly show you in here. So in here, you've got the option, if I do a new chat here, you can turn this into a temporary chat. So that just means in ChatGPT, it's not used to train the model. Now, as I say, in ChatGPT, you have to manually sort of click that and set that for each new chat. If you're using Claude, it does this by default. So different LLMs to address privacy and confidentiality differently. I mean, other ways you can do it is you could anonymize the data, of course. It requires a bit more work. Just paste in stuff that is not confidential. So there's other ways around it. Change the names, all sorts of things like that. But just a bit of a pain to have to do that, isn't it? So yes, concerned, but I think there are ways of addressing it.
Are you familiar with Purview? Corinne mentions that, so they were exploring that, and it uses SharePoint or Microsoft User Security.
Not familiar with that one, sorry.
Okay, great. Yeah. Any other comments or questions from anyone in the room? Yes.
value to...
Hang on, I'll just get you to...
Yep, let's put it on the microphone.
Thanks.
All right.
You said it doesn't add much value to, you know, presumably if you're a financial, you've already got an intermediate or advanced level, but how would it go with, say, writing a report to summarize your analysis results? Because I think that sometimes numbers people are not very good at writing actual words, communicate.
Yes. You'd probably need to give it some context. You couldn't just paste numbers in there, but if you gave it some context, a bit like I did with that little model that I had. So you could give it some context, you know, these numbers relate to this kind of model. This is the output. I've run, you know, several different scenarios. These are the results. It relates to this kind of company. Can you give me, give me your suggestions on what might be happening, or as long as you give it some context, I think it'd be able to give you a reasonable starting point at least. You know, be able to do at least 80% of the heavy lifting for you, I'd suggest. Yeah.
And there's a question from Theo West saying, do you know of any AI tool being used to replace the manual cell-by-cell audit function or parts to direct a reviewer towards a potential issue, as Oak would do from a high level?
Unfortunately, no, I don't know of any, but it would be a really great thing to do.
It would.
If you want to invent that, we'd all be eternally grateful.
Yeah. Let us know how you go with that, Theo.
Yeah, exactly. I would imagine the people that have the audit tools would be thinking along similar lines and going, how can we build AI into this? But I don't know of any that actually have it in there yet. Yeah.
Okay. Anything else from anyone in the room or online? I am interested to know, I'm kind of hung up on this issue of accuracy because, you know, when it's a generative tool, and if it doesn't know the answer, it makes it up. And that concerns me a lot. And I kind of struggle to get over that. How do you feel about that, Jeff?
I think on the numbers side, certainly things like Claude and now ChatGPT have gotten a lot better. I haven't seen it produce incorrect numbers in the recent versions. It's not to say it can't, but it seems to be a lot better than it was. I don't know what the percentage accuracy is, whether it's 100% now.
But it's very hard to check when you can't trace back.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, the only way we could check it, of course, is to test it by producing the right numbers and testing it back. And then you go, well, that didn't save me any time at all.
Not at all.
So that is probably defeating the purpose.
Yeah. Sharad says, could the models created by ChatGPT not have formulas included in the cells? That would be nice.
Yeah. I mean, well, you could essentially ask it to produce the formulas.
Yeah.
But then you go, well, how much time is that going to save you anyway? So, yeah.
Okay.
So it's an interesting one.
Fantastic. All right. Thank you so much, Jeff. I think we'll leave it there. And for those of you who are joining us online, we will send out any files that Jeff makes available to anyone who has registered. We'll make those available to you. Sure. And was that a QR code?
There's a couple of QR codes there. So we've set up an AI, we call it the AI Advisor. It's a custom GPT that just has a whole bunch of information about different ways of applying AI in a business. So you could do prompts like, I've got a few suggestions here. You know, I work as a accountant, financial modeler, whatever you are, in a consulting company, property company, manufacturing, whatever it might be, business. You know, how can we use AI? And we'll just give you a whole bunch of different suggestions about that. You know, suggest some repetitive time-consuming tasks that I could automate with AI. I realize that's quite small on the screen. You know, what are things that I shouldn't automate as well? So not everything requires AI to be automated. You don't need AI automation to automate stuff, but not everything should be put into AI, right? Some things require that human element and human touch. So it'll give you some things that you could, and perhaps some things that it suggests that you shouldn't. And then, yeah, there's a little form here as well if you want to give me some feedback on today as well, and get in touch. So other than that, thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Jeff. That was absolutely fascinating. And for those who are joining us in the room, I invite you to continue our discussion down at the Flight Club
Yes.
just down the road.
Cool.
We will head down there now. And for everyone else online, thank you so much. And I'll see you again soon.
Beautiful. Thanks, Danielle. Thank you for having me.